What's up, Hexicans? Welcome to the HEX Stakes Crypto Spabu show. So exciting times. We found out so many new things today, and we're gonna tell you all about that. So, Patrick, how's it going with the Pulse Chain sacrifice phase?
Exactly. So hello from my side as well to everybody out there. Hope everybody is feeling fine and everybody is excited for the Pulse launch. So first of all, we got a tweet from Richard Hart and also like a comment in the Pulse chat that this week will be the week when the sacrifice phase starts. And like in internal chambers, he told us he wants to start within the next 72 hours. So this week is the week where we will start the sacrifice phase.
That's right. We are talking hours now, not days, hours.
Exactly. We are talking hours, not days. And we are really excited. And we also know like how the launch phase of Pulse, how the sacrifice phase will look like. And just to give you a short summary of that, it won't be 30 days, it will only be 17 days. In the first 3 days, you don't have a time loss. You also don't have a volume loss because there is a volume ramp which goes over the whole time frame. And then it depends like who sacrificed the most will get the most volume multiplier as well, which will be 2.5x, so 150%, only if you are the guy who sacrificed the most. And then it goes down linearly through the other addresses, so everybody will get a volume bonus as well. And for the time ramp, so in the first 3 days, there won't be any time loss. And between day 4 and day 17, there will be 5% time loss each and every day. So if you're going in the first 3 days, it's our best recommendation to go in the first 3 days with everything you want to sacrifice. Because if you are going to sacrifice, for example, on the last day, you won't get a huge volume ramp and you will have like the most time loss possible, which is like already 2x. So in the first 3 days you have 1 to 1, and then on the 4th days you have 1 to 1.05, 1 to 1.1, and so on until the last day where it's like 1 to 2 or 1 to 1.98. That's it. It's like our short update in regards to the Pulse chain. And what we also have today is a nice interview partner. He goes with the name of Look Into Crypto. So let's say hello to Look Into Crypto.
Hey, Look Into Crypto, how's it going?
Can you guys hear me now? I think I got the mic set.
Yeah,
yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I just want to say one more thing. All the information you just got from Patrick, that the first 3 days of the sacrifice phase seem to be the most valuable days. So all that is not finished ground though. So the information can still change, even though the sacrifice phase is only a couple of days, maybe 72 hours apart. So Look Into Crypto, we got you here, a special guest for an interview. And we always start our interviews with the question, how did you got into crypto and when did you got into crypto?
Just
sure.
First of all, should we call you Wave3TV? Should we call you Look Into Crypto, or would you like to share your first name?
Yeah. So I rebranded from Look Into Crypto over to Wave3TV. So Wave3TV is the new baseline. I have a few ideas with the name and the branding, so that will be the official one from now on. But Look Into Crypto was a good stepping stone up to where I am today. So, but to your question, as far as when I got into crypto, I would say I really started paying attention to this market in early 2017. So there was I had basically about 8 to 10 months before the blow off top for Bitcoin. So at the time, I was pretty familiar, at least with the proof of work coins. At the time, like Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum was relatively new at the time. And I basically just fell down the rabbit hole and never really exited the market. For me, it's the direction of money and just the concept of what money even is. Really, it was really fascinating for me. So I saw it as a huge opportunity to make, honestly, like tons of money later on as well. So that was priority number one. And then number two was really just spotting basically really big trends develop throughout like the market. So I'm really glad I've stuck around. I've met some really great people over the last year. There's a lot of really good Hexicans even over during the Vegas trip. That was really cool meeting you guys even in person as well. So yeah, it's been a good run so far. So but yeah, if you're interested in any other details, feel free to ask away.
Yeah, you are part of a group that talks also about other coins, right? So you have a lot of knowledge about the whole crypto sphere, and we're going to talk about that later as well. So my second question for you is, when did you got into Hex?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, so I got into Hex during summer of 2020. So it was actually about a year ago from today is when I first officially got into Hex. I was familiar with the product since Richard launched it in December of 2019. I did start watching Richard's videos before he officially launched the smart contract on Ethereum. So I was pretty familiar with it at the time. And there's a couple like dollar cost crypto, for example. I know he was one of the early OGs. So I had a good idea, talking, being good friends with him over the last year or so. So I would say it was on my watch list for a very long time. I'd say about 8 to 10 months. And then I noticed the community on Twitter was extremely large because initially when I first came into it, I was familiar with Richard's videos, but I wasn't familiar with the community that was on crypto Twitter and really where all the social media outlets were. So that was a pretty big eye opener because, even my observation with cryptocurrencies in general, the community is a very important. It's like it's pretty much the most important aspect in my mind for let's say any coins or opportunities in the market. And it was a really big community, super active. And then I had a chance to meet some of the other guys in the community like Motley Investor, Crypto Coffee, Bran. And the game theory also was, to me, very brilliant. I thought the game theory was amazing compared to everything else in the market. And I think that's the biggest disconnect most people have is how powerful the game theory can be when it comes to even things like price appreciation. Because the reality is when you look at coins in the market, it does not take a large supply of the coin to be sold into the market that could theoretically like kill a price forever. Like you see with the proof of work coins from last cycle, like Bitcoin Cash, it's had very poor price performance. Litecoins had very poor price performance during this market cycle. And I think a lot of people underestimate like how important the tokenomics play into like the long-term growth of an asset. So I thought that the idea was brilliant, and I pretty much got hooked after that and secured a position while the opportunity is there. And it is still, relatively early in the grand scheme of things, but I'm very happy that I did. And I can already see there's a lot of new faces coming into the community today as opposed to a year ago. And it's come a long way in terms of the overall market slowly opening up and making their way into the Hex community, which is by far, if you look at across the entire cryptocurrency market, it is by far one of the most welcoming communities. It's very open. You can meet a lot of great people, and I've seen really good things really just within the community itself. So
it's a very helpful community in my point of view.
It's extremely helpful. So it's pretty amazing how even up until today, like in terms of the community itself, because that's something you don't normally you don't normally see that really in any community. Like in
I
fact,
haven't seen. So
yeah.
I'm in crypto like also since summer 2017.
Yeah.
And since then I'm on Telegram as well and in different crypto groups as well. And only when I found out about Hex and went in the hex.com Telegram group was the first time I really experienced a lot of helpful people in the crypto space. First time, because before that I had to watch, I don't know, like 5 different videos in order to know where I need to click right now when it comes to Bitcoin or Ethereum. And for example, like the free claim in the first few days, to sign a signature, a Bitcoin signature was also like what I never did before. And here the community was so helpful and it was pretty easy to do that after that.
So look into crypto. Then other question we always ask in our interviews is, what is your favorite part of the game theory in Hex?
I would say my favorite part with the game theory is just the longer stakes not being able to sell. Actually, I think that's my favorite part about it. So it's either you live by your word or you end up dying. That to me is what makes it so unique. So and you see that like with coins that even free claimed and held on and staked their coins and didn't do any emergency end stakes. You see some pretty substantial stakes that are coming out today, minting their coins. But then you also see instances where somebody comes in, does a 15-year stake, and then doesn't realize the game theory mechanics, that's really the important part. I mean, it can be broken down into a way that's really simple to understand, which is if you're staking your coins long, you're locked in. If you emergency end stake, you may as well just your money's pretty much going to get transferred over to the strong hand. So that to me was very, very interesting because that's really all cryptocurrency really is in the grand scheme of things across really every coin. This is true for Bitcoin and Ethereum, which I both think those 2 coins will also do really well. But the overall, when you look at the overall supply distribution of everything, the reason why any of this stuff goes up is because of supply concentration amongst the holders that basically never end up selling. And and that's something most people just don't quite understand. So that was something I knew even going into Hex. And when I saw some of these amplifiers that really encourage that type of participation, where over time, like the longer you stick around, you just get more benefits to that for being a long-term staker. So everything from that standpoint pretty much lined up for me, and it hit my check marks. And for that reason, I have coins that I have even staked out 15 years. It's been a really good ride so far. Like my real objective is really at this point the T shares, which that's probably going to be something a lot of new people will learn over time. And then it's really just the preservation of T shares over long periods of time. So it's going to be different for each person because even myself in the market, like I do have like a basket of other holdings, and I have plans in mind for my entire crypto portfolio. And in the case for Hex, the strategy I have is related to the T shares, and that's mostly what I'm focusing on. And I'll see what the best way to go about that after I've had some more stakes come out, because I know even a few that I've had. To boost up basically the shares while you do have to stake longer. So it's making basically some of those trade-offs early on based off like where the share rate is today. So hard to explain that, I guess, in 3 sentences.
Well, what do you think? Because right now, of course, if you started a stake in the beginning, which comes out right now, if you put it out like for much longer, you can still increase your T shares. But that will only be possible like for another year and a half is like my best guess. It's not, it won't be like for another 5 years or so.
Yeah, it's interesting because I noticed even the coins that I have been able to, let's say, restake, I took, let's say, even all the interest plus the principal, and I originally put like, let's say, if I put the the same time frame, let me see if I actually get, let's see if I can even get up to what the original amount of T-shares were. And it wasn't. It was actually about a 10% drop.
Yeah.
And that's going to be very interesting, because I think you are right with that. And most people right now are they're thinking in the sense that they will be able to get back at the most like their original T-shares if they stake to the same length, but that's not necessarily true. It is going to be less, and I would say that's where most of the disconnect is. And I think right now Patrick here has a good sense as to what could play out with that over 5 years, and then it's a question of whether anybody in the community has created like any sort of models based off when the stakes are coming out, trying to like project, how like what your share rate could look like in the future. So that's one that's on my mind right now. I don't quite have the perfect answer for it, but it's pretty much in line with what Patrick said, where it's going to be less, and there's probably going to be that limited time where you can actually do some of the those they're not really tricks, you're just increasing the time, so you're trying to boost up the T-shares, but that could just be for a very limited amount of time, and I personally don't know what the cutoff is on that.
Yeah, so my best guess is like 1.5 years more, because then we would be like 3 years in the game. The share rate will be about 25,000 per T-share, and I guess that's more or less like the point where you cannot increase even if you go over 10 years, because the bonus is only up to the 10-year mark. And if you already staked like for 3 years, then you have like already 1/3 of the boni in there. And as the share rate is more than 100% higher when you want to restake, yeah, this might be like the tipping point, I guess.
So this is a really important time. The next 2 years we have, this is the time to restake all you have, because we just saw it yesterday. Steph from the Staker posted this. There was a shark that restaked everything he had that from a stake that is coming out, and this shark understood that his T-shirts is a money printing machine, and why would we sell that? It's even better to restake all of this, and for the next 2 years you have the chance to make your money printer bigger, and this is what we are talking about right now. But I want to ask you something else. You have a huge work on your webpage. You have a lot of graphs, and we want to talk about all of your graphs and want you to explain to us what is the value of all those graphs, and what do they mean, and what information do you can pull out of that?
Sure. And which and just so I know. Oh, okay. So this website here, I guess, just to put some info on that, this is actually Gerardo's website. So the domain, look into Hex. I transferred that over to Gerardo after we had our first live stream, I think like 2 or 3 months ago, because I noticed he was putting out some really good content on Twitter at the time, and the domain was really just waiting for the kind of a good place to make really good use of. So these graphs here, this is actually the work that Gerardo's worked on.
You made it together. I thought like your mathematics and his graphs or something like that.
Yeah, I guess to put it in I guess from that standpoint, the I guess kind of the ideas I would describe Gerardo's is it has a very Cohen-esque vibe to it, where he's looking at some of the macro trends, and then trying to create, let's say, some sort of like risk model based on where the price is at today, while being able to analyze where we are in relation to Bitcoin and Ethereum. I would say my at the time when I was posting charts in Twitter, that was I was looking at previous fractals in the market, specifically related to the Wave3, so that it actually kind of inspired even the name over to like Wave3. But I was looking at fractals at the time, and kind of saw like mathematically the fractal is in the charts. So if we see basically this next parabolic impulsive wave, it would be life changing for people over a very short period of time. So I look at I guess I kind of go more with just based off like what I've seen in the market up until today. It's easier for me to, I guess, spot fractals and then relate to what that could look like on price charts. Whereas like Gerardo is using like sets of data and then actually putting more resolution into that because he's looking at specific seasons, looking at relative performance during certain times of year. So mine is more from like a top level view in terms of the macro trends, and then Gerardo here actually really breaks it apart into. He puts a lot of resolution onto it depending on what you're looking at. But overall, what's really cool is the models. If you even look back at what was being posted on Twitter at the time, there's actually a lot of convergence you can see with like the models that Gerardo has versus what was being posted at the time. Like even for example, the T shares. I recall there was streams on Discourse Syndicate at the time when it was around 0.1 ETH per T share. And there was a chart we were analyzing at the time where it was kind of suggesting the next impulsive wave could basically bring it up to in ETH and perhaps even more than an ETH per T share. And it's so far on that trajectory. I think today it's around like three quarters of an ETH per T share. So everything is basically valid. It's just now this is a really good place. It's a really good home for a lot of those different ideas, and then bringing more resolution to it. So it's a really good place. I would recommend for anybody that's brand new to Hex specifically. These videos that Gerardo's making and these plots are really a good way to analyze performance over various sets of like criteria, like quarterly ROI, fair value, risk models. It's really good. I think it's a really good resource for people in general, and it's all free. Like he published for free. He's not charging for any of this, so it's really easy access for for people to access, which is just look into hex.com, and he goes into detail how he's actually creating some of these models.
Yeah. Would you like to talk about the individual charts there?
Well, we already talked to Gerardo. Gerardo is a busy man. We will have him in an interview as well in the future, I'm pretty sure. But now we have you. Can you maybe show us your favorite chart on the page and maybe talk about the chart?
Yeah, I would say my favorite chart on the page, I would say is I would say it's actually the performance relative to Bitcoin, and I guess I haven't quite decided which one I'm more favorable on right now, the Hex versus BTC or the Hex versus ETH. So just to clarify, these are looking at it's the ROI performance of each of the assets over their entire life cycle. So Bitcoin's been in the market for over 10 years now.
There is one thing what I do not 100% understand, because what I know, Bitcoin haven't had a price in its first 500 something days. What I know from the charts of whales only. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it depends. Yeah, that's a good question. So at least if you're looking at the Bitcoin price chart, I guess it kind of comes down to what you baseline as like your initial data set. So I know one of the popular ones a lot of analysts use is the BLX chart on TradingView.
Yeah.
And that may or may not actually include all the initial data in terms of what Bitcoin was trading at. Because you're back when Bitcoin was first, or back when people even first traded Bitcoin, like the space was so young at the time, there was hardly any infrastructure, even with centralized exchanges at the time. So
there was nothing. It was like some nerds trading with each other, no?
Yeah. So that you could be right on that. There could just be like, at least for the Bitcoin there actually may be some data that's missing, but I'm not too familiar with what at least was around at the time, just because my frame of reference in the market didn't really start to come into play really until 2017, and then just the general awareness back during like 2014, 2015. So there's probably some that's a good point, actually. It may actually require seeing if there's who's been in the round, who was in the market at the time, back when, or was mining it, day one, and see if they're actually still here today. Because there's probably there might be some secrets you could find out there as far as like what the price actually was trading at the time.
Because like with the Hex versus ETH chart, it's easier to do because there we know we had centralized exchanges. We know that Ethereum was listed by Kraken pretty fast. What I still remember.
Yeah.
Okay, site is not loading. Oh, what? Where is my chart? Give me the chart. And here you see, created by Gerardo.
Well, I can tell you that my favorite chart on this page. Oh, now we got it. All right.
Yeah, now we got it. What is your favorite chart on this page?
Well, let's talk about that chart first, and then we go to the other one. What else is there to say? What information can we draw out of this chart?
Yeah, I would say if you're analyzing the charts, because we're still looking at a snapshot less than 600 days into the overall life cycle of Hex. So Ethereum has, of course, been around for close to 1,000 days now. Hex has been around for somewhere between 500 to 600 days, just by looking at this chart here. So my expectation is what'll be really interesting is if you look at the current wave, the price is in today, you can kind of see where this move is taking longer to play out, which is kind of normal. Like you even see that on the Ethereum price chart, where if you compare the first impulse and then the impulse that follows after that, it took a longer time to play out. So right now, from my viewpoint, at least with where Hex is at right now, it's basically in price discovery, and we won't know what the local top is until at some point in hindsight. We're able to look at fractals and try to speculate based on market fractals, but sometimes a fractal is really just kind of a reference. It's not really an absolute. I would say the one thing I can at least understand from this model is the current impulsive wave that the price is in is it's a longer move that's playing out versus that first initial run up, which kind of makes sense, because that seems to also be in agreement too. If you look at the cycles on Ethereum, where the moves just take longer to play out every successive cycle. So to me, it's pretty much normal. And then the other part that's not necessarily factored in yet is post big payday. Because if you look at this chart here, the first at least up until the big payday, that was under a different set of tokenomics. And then after big payday, the dynamics of that changed, and the idea as far as how many coins can enter the market is also vastly different today than back then. So I would say even the model itself during this period of time is just different than what existed, historically up until big payday. So I would say, like, if you want even better resolution on this, you probably need like another 1,000 days of data points to kind of even get more secrets as to how much the post big payday event has changed the tokenomics, now that the only supply coming in is the payout to the stakers at 3.69% inflation. So, and I think there's also, like, if you look at Hex, the Hex to Bitcoin pair on TradingView or charts.cointrader.pro, you can see that as well. Like Hex versus Hex to Bitcoin pair has made new all-time highs during this period of time. So we're kind of in a period where everything is in price discovery, and it's going to probably take like another 500 to 1,000 days to have more data points that just give more resolution as to how this could play out over the next 10 to 15 years. But so far it looks really good. Everything looks pretty much it's kind of in line with what I was speculating with after big payday, where I was like, hey, look, like the tokenomics of this are different today. There's just not a lot of supply coming in. So we could see some very different things play out, which we are on the price charts, if you even just look at the performance to Ethereum and Bitcoin. Now, the Hex to Bitcoin pair will be pretty consistent, at least in terms of that, like what that ends up evolving into. The one that will change, not because of Hex, but because of Ethereum, is the Hex versus ETH pair, because Ethereum too is also ramping up its tokenomics with EIP 1559, and later on when they do transition over to proof of stake.
Could you explain this EIP 1559? Because I mean it's already delayed since half a year and so on. And what advantage should it bring to the Ethereum chain? Because I don't get it really. Like what's the advantage of this EIP 1559?
Yeah, so the advantage of EIP, it's really just there to pump the price of Ethereum because it burns supply out of circulation, which during bull markets you end up having much more volume moving through the chain, so the gas fees start to spike up, and then you end up having more supply burnt out of circulation. So the idea is the upgrade is intended to share those profits amongst all the holders of Ethereum by just burning supply based on the usage. Now, if let's say we are in a bear market for the next 6 months, it's not likely we'll see much usage even on the ETH chain. The gas fees will probably drop pretty substantially. We've already seen the gas fees drop quite a bit since the 4K top. So the amount of supply being burned in a bear market, in my opinion, is not going to really matter that much. It's more of an amplifier I see during a bull market when everything goes back.
It still matters, because when I did my staking ladder, I just paid like 1 cent per each start stake. And when I swapped my Ethereum for HEX, I paid at most like 50 cents. And I just looked it up like 2 hours ago, and it was again like on nearly 30 Gwei. So you still need to pay like $10 to $15 for your first swap, which is, in my point of view, too much.
Yeah, so EIP 1559 isn't going to help the actual gas fees themselves. It's really, I just view it more, it just makes the user experience, so to say, slightly better. But the real benefit, because when I say user experience, like right now,
what makes it better? Won't there be any failed transaction? Won't there be any like out of time or out of requested coin or too less input and all that stuff you get sometimes, when you do the Uniswap swap?
Not necessarily, because once EIP 1559 rolls out, instead of everybody guessing on the gas prices, it just means everybody is going to be paying a lot for gas, roughly around the same amount of Gwei. Because right now, since Uniswap, or not Uniswap, MetaMask, during periods of high volume, you have basically whales or arbitrage bots that are adjusting the gas prices at all times, so it ends up being fluctuating all over the place. It's just trying to lower. It's basically trying to have, let's say, more normalcy as to like a stable Gwei price, but it's still going to be expensive. So instead of, let's say, it just being a pinball where it goes from one value to another and everybody's just guessing, it's just to make more normalcy on the gas price, but it's still going to be expensive. And the prices you see on ETH chain today in terms of the Gwei cost are probably they're probably a new relative, like low relative to like usage on Ethereum, but relative to what it was, like over a year ago, it's still significantly higher, and it costs a lot more to actually use the network. So it's adjusting to like a new baseline, but the whole dilemma with gas fees being low is that's not really likely to happen even over the next like 2 to 3 years, in my opinion. I think once things basically rev back up again, the gas fees are going to spike up. It'll just be easier to get your transaction included in a block, but you'll still be paying lots of Gwei to use the network to have your transaction included. So it doesn't really solve the issue as far as increasing like throughput, so to say, in the network. It's going to be expensive to use, and even things like accessing Uniswap are going to be very expensive during when the market does turn around again, which still may not be for another 6 to 12 months, depending on how long this bear market is for most coins.
So you agree that we are in a bear market?
Yes, I agree that we are in a bear market. The fractals, at least if you look at the Bitcoin price chart, it's making fractals you generally only see during either like a bearish wave, which you may as well just call like you either have a short bear market or a long bear market. But the fractal we're seeing today, you're getting either one of those scenarios is going to play out. It's just the length of time everybody will be speculating on. We are in a bear market. Bitcoin has blown out below the 20-week moving average, and I still think we're going to see lower prices. But I'm still anticipating we'll see a bounce, a pretty substantial one on the Bitcoin price chart before heading to new lows. But we'll see. We'll see what the market does. The market doesn't really.
I hope that won't play out in the next 3 to 4 weeks, because if Bitcoin makes this run up, let's say to 45,000, then Ethereum might follow to, I don't know, like to 2,500, 3,000, something like that. And this ramp up will increase the fees again, by 2-3x or something like that. Usually.
Yeah. If you're staking coins, then that's where Hex.Vision could come in handy, but it's still not optimal, because even during periods of low usage, if there is, let's say, that run up on the price, then it is going to be harder for people to either buy or even do things like stake. So, even for future stakes, since Ethereum as a network, there's a lot of usage across various DeFi protocols. I would say a good hedge to that is just making bigger stakes, and that's, in my view, basically the hedge to the gas fee dilemma, because at least within the Ethereum community, their idea of reducing the gas fees in the futures through what they call sharding, but I realistically don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. You can't count it during this bull market. It may honestly take like another 5 to 10 years before you see some serious improvements related to the gas fees. It's very difficult to upgrade software that's already running that has like a shit ton of usage on it, which Ethereum does, at least relative to the crypto market. It's very hard to update legacy software versus building up something brand new that's at least trying to like prepare for some of the inevitable issues when it comes to like block space. Because the thing with really all these networks is in terms of the fees being lower on one network versus the other, it's just a different set of trade-offs that are being made for throughput reasons. And there still is a maximum amount of throughput any network can have in theory before you run into the same issues. I just look at it for cryptocurrency. I think it's going to be very rare where the most secure networks, I think over time, they're just going to cost money to use. And I think the only way to plan around that's just having bigger stakes and using that as a hedge.
Will be like a proof of work blockchain be more secure than a proof of stake blockchain?
So there's a lot of debates on. Yeah, there's a lot of debates on that. I would say Ethereum still seems to be more secure than Bitcoin if you compare, let's say. Well, I guess Ethereum right now is so you're comparing the same thing.
You're comparing proof of work versus proof of work, and when it comes to Bitcoin, you have a centralization of the hash rate, so like more centralization than with Ethereum. So I totally agree that like Ethereum is more secure than Bitcoin, but to compare proof of work to proof of stake blockchains.
Yeah, that's I would say that's open for debate, because for Bitcoin you're using thermodynamics to basically secure the network. You're just heat generation, and then for proof of stake, it's a much more political system, and the politics are they try to at least subside some of the politics with like slashing mechanisms. So I don't, at least as far as like a source of information, which one is theoretically more secure, I think it's open for debate. I'm more sided on proof of stake just being the future for all this stuff in general, just because if there's certain trade-offs you can make to reduce energy consumption just to have the network operating. You know, I think those are good engineering trade-offs. Proof of work is pretty overkill, but either way, you know, even with the whole proof of work debate, it's still likely you'll see a concentration of things like hash rate in a certain geographical region. We saw it with China recently. It's going to improve like after that hash rate moves to other jurisdictions, but it's still subject to the same concentration of hash rate eventually really aggregating in a certain part of the world. So it's really hard. I would say, you know, security, decentralization, I think it more operates on a scale as opposed to an absolute. So I would say there's you can say there's hash rate centralization issues on Bitcoin, but you know, even if you compare it to proof of stake, I don't really see it likely somebody maliciously acting when their economic mass is at stake for doing so. So proof of stake to me is just I view it just as a more efficient way to solve some of the shortcomings that Bitcoin has, though it's still good for the two to coexist in the market simultaneously, because then you have a larger attack surface. Now, you know, if theoretically, if somebody wanted to try to nuke the entire market, you now have to basically take down these different forms of consensus, one proof of stake, one proof of work. So having options in the market is a good thing from a security standpoint, and it's generally good for it's just generally good for the overall security, in my opinion, just having the two coexist simultaneously.
Before you said something about Ethereum, and did I understand you correctly when you said like you don't think that there will be gas efficiency improvements on the east side, so that it will always be like the exponential gas increase when it comes to the end stake function?
Yeah, I can see there being improvements in terms of the efficiency, but since right now everything runs through that single, so Ethereum right now, in terms of their overall vision for proof of stake, is first they want to transition over to just securing the network using stakers as opposed to proof of work. And their idea on scaling then afterwards is to take, let's say, the entire network and split it across multiple EVM machines. So for example, you know, Ethereum as you view it today could be a representation on like one EVM, which represents one shard, and then another EVM can operate on a totally different shard. So it's almost like taking Ethereum itself and breaking it into a multi-chain environment where the throughput can then start to it can start to basically flow into different.
Yeah, because so the reason why I'm asking that is there is one issue nobody talks about, what I think is like the real reason behind the Pulse chain and the fork, which is that you won't be able to end stake a 5555 stake. Because, you know, when I look up my first 5555 stake, which I did like at day 46, what I remember, yeah. And when I press like emergency end stake right now, just to look it up, it's 1.3 something million gas. And it's running since 1.5 years, right? And so I can just 10x the gas price, which would be over 13 million in 15 years. And when I then look up, just go on Google and Google how much is the maximum gas for a Ethereum block, Google tells me 12.5 million. So if I have an end stake function to run, which is with 13 million gas, and the maximum which fits in one block is 12.5 million, I won't be able to unstake that, right?
Okay, that's a good question. I never really thought about the max gas that could fit theoretically in one block. So that's actually something nobody's really talked about. That's a really, because I would like to see the
maybe we can talk about it.
Well, so there's a calculation. This is from somebody else in the Hex community. His name's Dipcatcher. He was running, let's say, the calculation to run an end stake if it's like 1 year versus 5 years, based off like the daily, based off like the GUI price And then it adds up.
When did he do that? Did he do that before the last increase of the S-load function or after?
It was after the S-load increase.
Okay, yeah.
So, but then you'd have to take his calculation and then compare it to the maximum gas that's allowable in one block.
I mean,
and then see if
I'm just look at the facts what I have, yeah, and I have the fact that I made a 5555 stake before the 50. I know like where we are in the timeline. I know like how much longer the stake needs to run. I know that's like a linear increase of the daily gas cost to end stake it. So I don't see like my math is wrong here, you know.
Yeah, and plus the costs over time. Yeah, this is and I'm sorry. What was the limit you said was on a single for Ethereum block? The gas limit.
1.5 million. When so I just googled that. You know, I just was like maximum gas per.
Well, indeed, this is a big problem. If Hexicans cannot unstake 15-year stakes, this is a big problem. Whenever we try to talk about that with the other people, then they just say, Vitalik Buterin gonna do something and then it's gonna work or something like this. They increase the block size or whatever. But we don't know for sure. We talk a lot about Ethereum today because it's really important to understand why do we need the Pulse chain fork, right? Because we want to be faster on the blockchain. We want to be cheaper and more efficient and stuff like this. And I think you are pretty excited for the Pulse chain fork as well, right?
Yeah, so at least for the Pulse chain fork, I was mostly looking at it, like over time, because now we're gonna have basically there's Hex, which exists on Ethereum, and then Pulse Hex over on Pulse chain. So my open question is really just over time, which side ends up accruing more value, or maybe both of them are maybe it's split up between the two. So I was mostly waiting to see how the market itself would respond to that, and for that reason, I was going to say I'm keeping both coins. I don't know which side's going to be more favorable, but regardless, in terms of the gas cost, that could also lead into why having this option on Pulse chain, if that gas is an issue from 15 years from now. I'm actually very curious now. I'm gonna run the calculation later today as well, because nobody's actually really looked at it to that detail, comparing how much fits in one block. But it could, if even today, if there's information suggesting it is an issue, that just kind of solidifies why it's necessary to even have this as an option for Hexicans later on. Because
like Richard from the get-go said, like, no, the bear market will solve the fee issue. He said that in August. He said that like a few months later, and then a few months later he said, no, I'm going to fork the ETH.
And the reason is because in the next bull market we will see those high fees again, and we don't want to get wrecked again by those fees in the next bull market.
Yeah, or to hinder onboarding. Let's frame it like that. And the other reason is that nobody knows if Ethereum. If the Ethereum guys are increasing the S-load function once again, because they did it like twice in the last 16 months, no?
Yeah, see, and this is why, like, when I look at, let's say, Ethereum itself, to me, it's very unlikely. Like, in other words, we just see a market where it's only just Ethereum. I think the reality is based on like even with the calculations that you're running today, like if there's even information suggesting why it's necessary, then that's already, from my view, like a good, there's another chain that does all this other stuff that's specific, like even to that use case. So the problem I see just in general, and this is where this kind of ties into like the ETH maximalism, is it's not going to handle every single use case well. It's just not. So if that gas fee is an issue, to me it just means like the trade-offs that exist on Ethereum are just not going to satisfy all these different products that can exist in the future. And perhaps this is a good reason to even have something like Pulse chain. If those 15-year stakes start becoming an issue, then you have at least a network that's better designed for gas fees and things like that, because the problem, with the ethos
But,
on Ethereum.
it worries me, like, for the future. Yeah? If
Yeah.
there is let's say there is an initial sell-off of EHEX, and then
Yeah.
lots of people think like, this will perform pretty well in the future. Let's go on the EHEX side again and make 5555 stakes there, And in reality, we will only know it. When do we know it? Like in the end of 2035 or something like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have an awesome chat. So thanks for everybody being in the chat. Thanks for everybody liking and subscribing. So I want to bring up Graphene. He's saying at Hex Lion, I think the 12.5 million block gas is a target. Max is twice as much. Miners can also increase if there is a consensus change in the future. Very glad you brought this up. Need future analysis. So you see, there are already people saying, "Oh, Vitalik Buterin is gonna make it work somehow." But I actually do not want to talk about gas anymore because it's so uncertain. We don't know a lot about it.
Sure.
But what I want to talk about is the Pulse Chain fork that is coming up really, really soon. So let's talk about that. I was really, really excited when Patrick told me that we have you in the interview, because I know you have a lot of experience with other crypto communities. And I want to ask you, what other communities do you see playing on the Pulse Chain? Like we have Decentraland, for example. I just brought it up in the German stream today. Do they want to migrate to Pulse Chain to make their game working again? And maybe what other communities are there and do you think going to be on the Pulse Chain as well?
Yes. So in terms of the community, so I can't necessarily speak for like certain DeFi communities as far as what their ultimate end goal is, because right now we're seeing we're seeing the market experiment with various EVMs. So for example, there's of course the layer ones, like Pulse Chain is a layer one, Binance Smart Chain is a layer one, and then there's other experiments with like Polygon, which is more of a side chain, and then even more experimentation with things referred to as Optimism, Arbitrum, which are an EVM-based side chain. So it depends, like, I guess, which layer the market wants to move on to.
Can you explain EVM-based side chain?
Yeah, so EVM, Ethereum virtual machine. So when I refer to sidechain, I'm just calling it layer 2. So Optimism and Arbitrum are layer 2 scaling solutions. The benefit with, let's say, a layer 2 solution is the end goal is for the security of layer 2 to inherit whatever exists on Ethereum. I don't quite remember what the mechanism is that does it, but basically the layer 2s are dependent on the security that exists on Ethereum, and then separate L1s have their own security and consensus that's just within their own network. So it's easier to build out onto, let's say, a new layer 1 versus, like, right now layer 2. It's the tooling and infrastructure doesn't even fully exist for it yet. It's still in research and still in fairly early test nets. So I would say right now the market is just experimenting between different options that are available. And I would say any of these options is basically valid for another DeFi protocol to try to launch their product on. So it could be Pulse Chain, it could be something like Optimism if they have a certain direction they want to go in. So right now we don't really know what the market itself. We all we know is there's experimentation with multi-chain, but there's no clear direction right now as to where more value will flow over time, or whether it just breaks out across multiple things because of the whole thing with, like, throughput and not being able to fit, let's say, all this activity on just like a single layer 2, because it still kind of goes back to the whole issue with scaling, and there is a certain amount of throughput all of this stuff ultimately offers. So we may just come to terms with just the market's going to have different layer 1s that are EVM, different layer 2s that are EVM. The advantage with EVM is it inherits all the tooling that already exists on Ethereum and allows for direct integration into something like MetaMask. So for example, Optimism in the MetaMask, under the networks in MetaMask, you could basically create a separate network that connects the Optimism. You can also create a separate network that connects the Pulse chain. And
I mean, if you're like saying create a separate network, do you are you referring to create a separate decentralized network, or will this always be like the Polygon networks, where a small group or a small set of people has like the total control of the EVM?
Yes, so it would apply to either scenario. In most situations right now, so like to your point on Polygon, they have admin keys, so you're connecting to their centralized network. And then in the case for, I think even Optimism and Arbitrum, I'm not sure if they still have admin keys as well, but it's probably going to be a mixture of the two. There's probably more right now. There's more that are just centralized, even though you're connecting, let's say, to another network that's EVM based, like Polygon or perhaps Optimism. The only one that's maybe a little more, it's still not really. I guess you can make arguments as to the decentralization of it, but in the case for like Binance Smart Chain, I believe there's 21 validators on their network, and then I guess it's open to interpretation whether 21 constitutes as being decentralized enough, since this kind of all operates on a scale. But
I would say no, because you don't have any chance to be one of those 21 validators. They are set, and you don't have any chance to be one of that, even if you have like unlimited money supply, right?
So I'm not sure how the staking works on Binance. I'm not sure if everybody could contribute to, let's say, like a staking pool. I'm not too familiar with how the staking mechanics work on it, but
okay,
if it's limited, let's say, to 21, and if the open market can't participate in that 21, then yes, it's very centralized around whoever is operating those 21 nodes. So most
when it comes to the Pulse chain validators, was I know like from Richard's streams, he said like you just need to have like a lot of Pulse supply, and then you're in there.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how big the validator. That's actually probably a good one. Is like you could compare the validator set on Pulse chain and then compare it to like other EVM based L1s or L2s in the market today to compare. But yeah, I guess you'd have to have like a market consensus on like what's acceptable as like a validator set. But there's trade-offs to that, because like the bigger, like in the case for Ethereum, the reason why it sucks to use today is because they're the ethos for a lot of the Ethereum community is to try to keep it as like decentralized as possible. But then there's some pretty prohibitive trade-offs that you run into that don't allow for certain utility to really exist on their chain. So I kind of view it more as I have more of an engineering mindset. So for me, I think trade-offs just relate to different use cases. And in the case for like Ethereum, there's just certain use cases that aren't going to work on their chain as a result of that. So I think really the question everybody could ask themselves is like, based on how the network itself, based off the validator set, like what actual use cases make sense in this scenario that Ethereum can't fulfill today? Because there's a lot, like Ethereum, there's a lot of things Ethereum can't do today, and that's why we're seeing all this experimentation where it's still basically an open question as to what has the most like convergence as like a solution, so to say.
Do you think that Pulse chain will have any scaling issues?
I don't, at least not for, I'd imagine if it did, I don't think it'd be for a while. I'd say at least initially it's probably going to be you're probably going to have easy access to the block space, but theoretically, I guess if you have a ton of demand running through it, you could run into it, but then you go back to the whole thing as far as increasing gas limits and then allowing at least the network to scale based off the technology we have today. Because if you even look at
it's true. Or if I say like scaling issues are
Mhm.
easier to solve on the Pulse chain than on the Ethereum chain.
I would say it's easier to build out a separate layer one that just gets a certain amount of throughput. So I would say it's, in my view, easier to just have a different L1. So in this case, you have Pulse chain as the L1 that can handle a certain set of use cases, and then other use cases can exist on different L1s from like an ideal sense. But realistically, there's going to be it's an open market. It's all open source. So the market itself is going to be experimenting and putting, use cases on the network that most people may not necessarily anticipate. So um, I just kind of look at the block space dilemma as a natural part of it kind of goes back to the whole thing where there's a certain amount of block space that's available, and then once there's a high enough demand for that block space, it just becomes expensive to use the network. And then the only way to like really resolve that is to take.
But wouldn't it be way easier on the Pulse chain just to increase the block size?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is you could basically increase the block size to allow for more scaling. I just don't anticipate that to be really an issue, at least for some time. So the baseline it starts off with could be completely suitable for the demands of the network itself, and then at a certain point, if the usage starts to really ramp up, then you can go back and revisit if there needs to be like an increase on the block size. And then there's ways to relate it to the hardware that exists today. So there's like different ideas from different I guess founders in the market as far as at least allowing the technology we have today to scale with the block size on these networks. I think for Ethereum it's way overkill, and because we have better hardware now, so I don't see why you can't just let the network just scale with the hardware that exists in the world today. But for now, I would say it's what the baseline is probably fine to start with, and then I guess would be interesting is do you know what the increase is relative to Ethereum today, like in terms of the relative difference in terms of the block size, or I guess the gas limit you could fit into a single block?
Yeah, I mean the gas limit you could fill in a single block, according to Google, is 12.5 million gas.
Okay, and then for Pulse chain, do we have like any? I'm sure there are. I just don't know what the actual specs are. I didn't look at the specific specs for the as far as gas limits, but I guess you can compare it.
I haven't seen any of that actually, so I don't.
Oh, okay, I gotcha. Yeah, because I guess that's one way you could do a relative comparison to, what's on Ethereum today to have a good sense as to how much space is available. Because the thing with like a lot of these DeFi protocols is or not, sorry, not DeFi protocols, the layer one chains is you have bots like today that are just on Ethereum, like arbitraging, doing all sorts of
like my best guess is that the Pulse developers are undoing the increase of the S load function because it was just something which hurt the Hex community and not improved anything, because they increased it and everything else way increased as well. Yeah, so there was no benefit for that. Yeah, so even that Vitalik said like, yeah, it's beneficial for I don't know for what, but I don't see it beneficial for anything.
Well, they certainly didn't have the Hexicans in mind when they did that. But let's talk about...
Maybe they had the Hexicans in mind when they did
you think so?
Maybe. I don't want to spread conspiracy theories, but it's possible, I guess.
So let's talk about Pulse chain a little bit more. The big change in Pulse chain, what has never been done before, is that Pulse chain will start with all the coins ever existed on the Ethereum network, right? So we're going to fork a full network. And what do you think is the upside to that?
Well, so I guess if somebody is buying, I'm just going to say if somebody speculates, like not on the Ethereum side, but if somebody actually speculates on PRC tokens on the network, they're probably going to get destroyed, because money is all based on social consensus. So the protocols that exist on Ethereum today, there'd have to be a social consensus that the ticker they're using is now on Pulse chain. We don't know what that looks like. So really, if somebody wants to not take, let's say, an excessive amount of risk, like what makes sense from my view is either Hex on Ethereum, Pulse Hex on Pulse chain, or Pulse token. But for anybody that starts to speculate on random ERC20s where they take, let's say, all their economic mass or economic energy and try to move it into like a random PRC coin with the intention of becoming a whale, they're probably going to get absolutely annihilated. That's my take on it. So I think the big three are the I would view those the three as the stores of value, and then everything else is probably going to trade either into Hex, Pulse Hex, or Pulse token. So it's kind of the dynamics you even see like on Ethereum dexes, where tokens may trade into like ETH or something like that, or USDC if that's like one of the really liquid pairs. But ultimately,
right now you said like an interesting point with USDC, and I still have troubles like to imagine how all the USDC pools, like liquidity pool, will look like after the fork, because it's like fake USDC. It's USDC without any central authority taking care of it.
That'll actually be very, very interesting. I agree with that. That'll be pretty exciting, actually, to see how that plays out. I would say
exciting or pretty chaotic.
Yeah, I would say if you're speculating on the PRC, like if you're speculating on any PRC coins that are not either Hex or Pulse specific, you're probably better off just getting the snapshot on the Ethereum side, and then you can play around on Pulse chain with what gets copied over in the system state, and then you can use that as basically your reserve to speculate on other PRC tokens. I would just highly advise not to use your Hex, your Pulse Hex, or your Pulse token to buy a random DeFi protocol, because we don't know how that's going to really play out. So the easy way is just get the snapshot, and then you can play around, and then just remember that the community consensus is going to converge, at least within the Hex community. It's likely going to converge between Hex, Pulse Hex, and Pulse token. So, for somebody that wants to take all their economic energy and try to move it into a DeFi coin, a random DeFi coin, they're probably going to lose. They're probably going to have a huge opportunity cost with that later on, versus just focusing on like the value stores and then just getting like what they can have copied over by the system state. So I mean, there's I know there's Uniswap holders, there's synthetics holders. So just use what you already have, and then you can speculate with the system state that gets copied over, and then you're not at risk at that point of let's say a community consensus shifting from like one chain to another. Because really every single, like the Hex community is a social consensus that exists on the internet. Same thing within the synthetics community. That's a social consensus that exists on the internet. There's different forms of democracies on the internet amongst like the biggest protocols that exist. Hex is of course a really big social consensus on the internet, but there's other forms of consensus that have different views, and unless their views align a certain way, that's where it's really important for people to understand that, so that they don't move their economic energy into something that may not have that social consensus. But if you're focusing primarily between Pulse Hex, Hex, and Pulse token, those are the three safe ones that you can actually make a good assessment on because of the consensus within, let's say, the Hex community. But everything else, it's kind of it's 100% speculation what will happen. But I will say the liquidity pools that you mentioned with like the Pulse USDC is going to be very interesting, because I do imagine we could see basically like activity explode just out of pure speculation, because all speculators in the market have to do is just flip over the network in Uniswap. It's basically it's built into the wallet. You just have to add the network like people do with Binance Smart Chain. It's basically just as easy to do that. So you can just flip from ETH chain, you can flip the Pulse chain. It's really convenient that it's built into it's you can directly access it through MetaMask, and that's really powerful, and it's basically backwards compatible with everything.
So what do you think will happen like to all the USDC pools? Let's talk about like our most liquid pool, which is like the USDC HEX pool.
Okay.
Let's take that as an example.
Okay, that's a really interesting one, because that's a good question. What's going to happen with the...
Yeah, because I have no idea. I have no answer. That's why I'm just forwarding the question to you.
Maybe explain your question a little bit better, and then we have the chat that can answer that. So what do you mean, what can happen with USDC and HEX?
Yeah, so USDC HEX is right now the main pool on Uniswap. Uniswap code will be forked over to the Pulse chain. So there will be like this USDC HEX pool on the Pulse chain as well. But there aren't like, I can't say like real, but there aren't backed USDCs on the Pulse chain.
Yeah, that is going to be interesting, because from my view, what's actually pegged is or at least pegged in some way to like USD is USDC, and there's probably, so Circle is the one that issues USDC, and I guess like if somebody really I guess research into them, I don't know if they actually publicly say here's how much, if they have basically audits and stuff backing, you know, how much reserve of dollars they have in some kind of bank account to allow them to issue USDC. But from my viewpoint, what exists in the market today is USDC. And then if there's, let's say, a copy of that, I don't really anticipate that being like the same thing, because the whole reserve for USDC is like based under Circle and based off what USD reserve they have for that. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen with like Pulse USDC, how that's going to play out. Truthfully, that's going to be an open question for the market to decide. But my guess is USDC.
Yeah, but how can it be an open question for the market to decide? Because if we just like fork it over and then we have like the PUSDC HEX pair, and people are going to trade on it, then people are going to trade on it. Yeah. And then the company of USDC can come along and say all the PUSDC tokens are worthless by now.
Yeah. Correct. They could say that. They absolutely can. That's why from my view, USDC is the valid stablecoin. Like I think basically once you, if it's not in any way like legitimized by Circle, saying like here we have a basket of assets, and if it's just USDC, that's the only one I look at as a stablecoin. So you're correct on that. Like it could just be the market is just speculating on PRC coins, but then if Circle comes in and says that one's not backed by anything, it's not worth $1, then it has no value to it, basically. And then the market,
they can also like manually remove USDCs out of your balance or not, because they have full control over the USDCs. No. Yes,
they do. So Circle does have the ability to. They could actually freeze somebody's stablecoin balance. That kind of ties into like the issues today, where the stablecoin options in the market today aren't actually decentralized. They're centralized either under Tether or Circle, that have power to basically revoke somebody's access to their stablecoin balance, even though it's in their wallets. And ultimately, from my view, they have the upper hand in deciding what stays and what goes as far as like stable coins, because it's already centralized around USDC. So I don't think you can really take like,
the other thing is it won't be even possible to don't have any PUSDC versus PRC tokens, or because if you are not the issuer of the contract, of the Uniswap contract, then you can't do anything after the fork, or?
So
besides like reallocating the liquidity in the pools.
So if I'm understanding right, you're saying basically when the contract gets copied over onto Pulse chain, whoever previously had control of that contract has control of it on the new chain, if I'm understanding correctly.
Sure, it's right, no?
Yeah, that is, I believe that's correct. That makes sense to me.
Well, we have an interesting thought from chat here. The Dutch Hexicans says, Richard has probably thought about that. And there is a reason he is asking to pull the liquidity from the ETH side and put it to the USDC side. To me, this is not just for the disconnection to ETH. So yeah, I also think that Richard probably thought about that. And
yeah,
I think he will present a good solution for that in the future. Let's see how it's gonna play out.
I also see like that in the first time the main trading pair on the Pulse chain will be Pulse versus ETH. Pulse versus Hex on the like versus PHEX.
Yeah.
PLS to PHEX.
That's pretty interesting actually, because now if you wanted to basically get Pulse Hex, you could try to buy up, like if you have like a PRC, if you have like a USDC balance in your ETH wallet, and then that system state gets copied over onto Pulse chain, you could try to buy Pulse Hex with it, because I imagine at some point the liquidity pools are gonna flip over to USDC or something like that. But it's gonna be it's going to be a very interesting experiment to see what plays out when after the system state gets copied over and then the chain's actually live for the first time, like after the first block is produced on the chain. Then it's going to be so interesting to see the dynamics of that. But I view, for me, the stablecoin I view as the one that's pegged to the dollar is just USDC on Ethereum. And I don't see you can really copy over a stablecoin and then that be the same representation of what exists on Ethereum. It kind of goes back to the whole thing in terms of like consensus, and the consensus for USDC is centralized around Circle, and they have again the upper hand on a lot of this stuff, because at the end of the day, if somebody wants to take their stable coins and convert it to dollars and withdraw it to their bank account, you generally speaking, the most liquid off-ramps, on and off-ramps are the exchanges, and they're currently authorized to hold things like USDT and USDC. So those are basically the pairs to actually access money in like legacy finance. So
interesting how, it will be definitely an interesting time how this will play out in the beginning. Do you think that from the get-go we will have the ETH Pulse bridge, so that we have like a Pulse versus ETH or Pulse versus USDC pair on Uniswap, and that we will be able to buy Pulse on the Ethereum network, bridge that over to the Pulse network, and the same thing goes for Ethereum? Or
that's a good question. I do expect that we'll see some bridges. I'm just not sure if the bridges will exist right after the network is live.
When you say bridges, because this would be like my next question, do you also think there will be a bridge that you can easily go from EHEX to PHEX, like just bridge EHEX to PHEX?
So EHEX. So that if you have EHEX, so if you have Hex on the Ethereum side, and then if you use a bridge to get to the Pulse side, that's actually that's still this is where it gets like confusing with like the nomenclature. But the Hex that you bring onto the Pulse side, you're using a contract to get that over onto the Pulse side. So the Hex you bring over is not the same thing as Pulse Hex that gets copied over with the system state. There's still two different assets where you have Hex on the Ethereum side that has its liquidity pools, and then even if you bring that over onto the Pulse chain, it's still I still view that as Hex, and then you have Pulse Hex on Pulse chain, and you could, in theory, have like you could actually create a liquidity pool where it's like basically a Hex to Pulse Hex liquidity pool, and then there's some kind of ratio between the two. But whether that happens on like the Pulse side or the Ethereum side, or even both sides, because the pools could exist on both chains. I think that's probably the most realistic, is you'll have pools that exist on like both chains, and then if there's ever arbitrage, like bots in the market will take care of any arbitrage between the DEXs on both
Don't you
sides.
think that it's like pretty hard for future onboarding? Because like the future onboarding, in my point of view, will be that in a few months we will have a direct fiat on ramp to get pulls. So the new onboarding would be like, get your US dollars, use this site, get pulls for your US dollars, go on the Pulse network, and then go there and exchange your pulls for Hex. And this will be like hard if there are like 2 Hex on each blockchain.
Yeah. So so part of it, and this is something I think the market itself has to kind of realize, is there's basically two different, there's the Hex and then the Pulse Hex. So you're right, it probably, like if there's somebody that's like new to the market, it would likely cause confusion for them, kind of similar to the whole thing with like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. There was a lot of questions as to which one is the real Bitcoin, basically. So that's why that open question, and that's even something that the Hex community itself has to figure out. I'm not going to speculate on one or the other for that reason, but you're right. It's a time for it's going to take time, in my opinion, for the market to set some sort of equilibrium where you have some sort of ratio between Pulse Hex and Hex. I don't think that's going to be immediately known from the start. I think there's a lot of speculation there. But as far as like the onboarding,
on that, just because
yeah,
I'm curious.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think it's a social experiment that's going to take months to really play out, because the price discovery part takes time. Like, price discovery isn't really a question that's answered immediately. Like, even if you look at something like Bitcoin Cash to Bitcoin
discovery is a ever ongoing process, in my point.
Yeah, it's an ongoing process, and then and immediately the answers to even the questions we have today won't be known for quite some time. And because of those unknowns, that's why I generally recommend, like, if you want to remove the speculation in terms of what the market's going to do, then having a balance of all three of them is the safest way. It's like the safest strategy, because now you're not guessing as to what the market deems is like the king of the trading pairs, so to say. But in terms of like the onboarding itself, I don't know whether users can, because I imagine it like one of the most liquid ways people onboard into the network or into cryptocurrencies, they use something like Coinbase or Kraken or some other centralized exchange, and then they take their Ethereum or ERC20 coin, and then they withdraw it onto Ethereum's chain. Now, I don't know whether it's possible to directly withdraw from, let's say, an exchange over onto something like Pulse chain and then have like the Pulse pegged equivalent, because I imagine you'd have to withdraw onto the ETH chain and then from ETH chain move over onto Pulse chain. But I don't know if there's like a direct route that allows somebody from like a centralized exchange or custodian to just off ramp directly onto something like Pulse. Just because I kind of imagine, at least
I mean, I think so because with Polygon, Ramp.network or Transact was possible to go directly with your Matic token to the Polygon network.
Okay.
So that's why
Yeah.
I'm expecting this as a possibility. So at first, like for this one-way streets, like
Hmm.
Transact or Ramp, because those are like just to go in the crypto market and not like to cash out.
Hmm.
And after, I don't know, after a year, I am expecting listings on Kraken, Coinbase, Gemini, Bitstamp, and so on
Hmm.
for polls.
Yeah, that can absolutely, something like that can absolutely um, play. I guess if we go back to the Matic, did you say you can withdraw, let's say
Not
Ethereum from?
neutral, but you can go on it. So
Yeah,
go with your US dollars directly on Polygon. It's like a one-way street.
I see. Okay. Yeah. If that's the case, I don't.
Just an on-ramp, not an off-ramp.
Yeah, I would see. I don't see why it would be any different then for Pulse Chain, because I guess that's the advantage with um, EVM, and EVM is just Ethereum virtual machine. It everything is inheriting the same tools that exist on Ethereum, so you're not having to like start from scratch. So I don't necessarily see why you couldn't then do the same thing for something like Pulse Chain and just have an easy on or off ramp depending on which
Yeah, I guess
direction you want
like
to go in.
first there will be like only the on-ramps, and after some more time, we see
Hmm.
the bigger exchanges which are on and off ramps listing polls.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, right. I guess right now as far as the exchanges themselves, um, are you guys like speculating as far as what exchanges are likely to be the first ones to offer, I guess, like that kind of on or off ramp?
I haven't like speculate like which exchange might be like the first one. I
Yeah.
guess like the one-way exchanges like Ramp.network or like
Hmm.
Transact.com
Hmm.
will be the first ones,
Right.
and then the big known exchanges might follow.
Hmm.
Because when it comes to polls, there is nothing which hinders them that much as when it comes to HEX.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to HEX, Binance won't ever list it because
Hmm.
when it comes to HEX, the goal is to get your money in your hands, so off
Hmm.
the exchange,
Yeah.
isn't which isn't 100% the case when it comes to polls. Of
Hmm.
course, it's better to hold it in your own keys. It's better to stake it to a validator that you get a bit of income,
Hmm.
but it's not the same thing like the time value of money what we have in HEX, yeah, with the lockup mechanism and so on. So, yeah, how should I frame that? But it's easier for people to hold pulls on an exchange because
Yeah.
they don't lose out a lot.
Yeah, I would imagine at least by the time Pulse is, let's say, listed on an exchange, then at that point you can, because the I guess when it comes to the using, let's say, an on or off ramp, like anybody that's using, for example, Binance Smart Chain, will likely know how to withdraw coins off an exchange onto something like Pulse Chain. So as long as there's the listing on some sort of centralized exchange, or at least offering some sort of on or off ramp, uh, the market itself will figure out how to use it, because it's actually the means to do it is already being used in the market today. Like even something to an extent, not completely, but to an extent, because it all kind of ties back to MetaMask, and then being and just switching the network to Pulse, and then when you withdraw, you're withdrawing it to the Pulse chain network, and there's usually not in all instances, and this is what people have to be careful with. Generally, when you withdraw from exchanges, some of them have like safety in place that you don't try to withdraw onto the incorrect network. as long as that's built into the exchange, which a lot of them do not, but definitely don't assume it is. Like, make sure you're withdrawing to the correct network.
Yeah.
Is like in the case for Coinbase and Kraken, I believe Coinbase definitely has the safety in place, but there's enough people today that know how to use the on or off ramps. Basically, I think that the integration into MetaMask is the main one that allows for enough people to figure it out. But there's definitely going to be just people confused that are just entering crypto for the first time, because all this multi-chain stuff, like even for somebody new today to get from like ETHland over onto Binance Smart Chain, like they're not even going to know really how to use something like MetaMask, or like how like the networks themselves even work.
I know what you mean. So even like people withdrawing from Binance have some issues. So like only 2 or 3 weeks in the past, like 3 or 4 weeks in the past, I had somebody who was who wanted to send his ETH on the Ethereum blockchain on the MetaMask, but he ended up sending it to the Binance Smart Chain.
Yeah.
MetaMask. So, so what we had to do is like install the Binance Smart Chain in his MetaMask, and there he found his coins. And from there, he couldn't send it like directly to the ETH chain. It wasn't possible. So what he needed to do is send it back to Binance and then redo it to send it to the right network on the MetaMask.
Yeah, and that's I think it's going to end up getting to a point where hopefully, you know, for any chains that people want to use, it just gets to a point where it has enough usage in that there's the on and off ramps. And then if somebody's using something like, you know, Ethereum, Binance, or Pulse, they have the option to do it directly from the exchange, and are just aware to how to get from let's say an exchange to the chain itself. Because at least the interchange transfers, that's probably more, I would say that's probably more like intermediate level. It's not necessarily like complicated. It's just knowing, like understanding it, I guess.
Understanding blockchain and understanding how to transact on blockchains and what is happening in the background.
Yeah, there's actually some good there's actually tutorials on how to move value from something like ETH onto Binance Smart Chain, which, by the way, the bridge for Binance Smart Chain is actually a centralized bridge. The way their bridge actually works, they're not you're not sending, let's say, Ethereum to a smart contract on Binance Smart Chain. The way their bridge works is you take the Ethereum or USDC or whatever ERC20 you have, and you send it to their centralized exchange. And then what they do is they then issue you on their chain their Binance pegged equivalents. So they don't actually have a trustless bridge that connects their chain over to Ethereum. Like their infrastructure, at least on that part, is still it's still pretty not, it's not very good right now. But in the case for, you know, moving value from one EVM based network to another EVM based network, all of that you could do trustlessly through the smart contracts. And I believe the way it would work is you would send or this could be one way to do it. There's probably multiple ways to do it, but like you would send, let's say, you know, Ethereum to, or Pulse or Hex, like you would, or I guess Hex or Ethereum, you'd send that to some kind of smart contract, and then the smart contract then issues you the pegged equivalent over onto Pulse chain, and then the market is assuming that the contracts or the bridge that's in place are fully operational and trustless, and there's no issues as far as security, which may or may not be true. So I guess for any contracts that do pop up, you know, make sure everybody, this is for everybody in general, just make sure it's actually a legitimate bridge and you're not because there are going to be attempts just in general with this stuff where
you can have use anything what isn't confirmed by Richard or by the Hex.
Yes, that's a good way to go about it. Until you hear Richard mention it, then I would be very hesitant as far as any bridges you may be using, and probably a good starting point just to get familiar with the sandbox, just to get familiar with the two different chains is you'll have the coins you have on Ethereum, the system state will copy over onto Pulse chain, and then you can play around with what you had copied over onto Pulse chain within that network, and then hopefully over some time there's at least a reputable solution that connects the two chains. I think Richard may have mentioned something with the bridging during one of his streams, but don't necessarily hold me to that. I don't quite my recollection on it's not very clear, so I'll have to go back and watch some of the streams on that, because I remember hearing I don't remember if I read this in the Telegram channel or whether it was on the stream. There's just been a lot going on with Pulse chain, so I will look into that though.
In one of the streams, he said that he will provide a ETH Pulse bridge. I guess that's more or less how he said it. He said like Pulse bridge.
And ETH will never be the Pulse. What's gonna happen, as I understood, is that you send the ETH to the bridge, and the bridge gonna lock the ETH up and gonna buy Pulse with that, and like put that to your wallet.
Okay. I understand it a bit differently, that because I understand it, if you're on the Ethereum network and put ETH in this contract, you will get like a wrapped version of ETH on the Pulse chain. And if you want to put like Pulse over from the Pulse chain to the ETH network, you use a bridge as well. And what you get is like the Pulse version on the Ethereum blockchain, so like the wrapped versions. But you don't necessarily need to call them like with a W in front, so wrapped. So because you can just say, okay, here is Pulse on the Ethereum blockchain, here is Pulse on the Pulse chain. And you have the contract in between, and there is no need to rename it here or there.
Right, and I think ways like at least the market. Well, I guess that's interesting as far as the name aspect of it. Because well, hold on, I'm actually thinking about this for a sec here. Because when you withdraw, let's say, or if you move, I should say, Pulse onto ETH chain. Okay, yeah, I see. You could just have. I guess it doesn't really matter because you're moving over. Like you're not creating.
Because when you think about USDC is existing on the Tron chain, on the Ethereum chain, on this chain, on that chain, you know, and on each and every chain it's just called USDC, and not like wrapped here or wrapped there or something like that. It's also when it comes to Bitcoin and to Ethereum that there is like a wrapped version with a W in front. And so I don't see it why you should rename it. Because, okay, now I'm trading Pulse on the Ethereum network, and then I'm trading Pulse on the Pulse network, you know? So
yeah, I see what you're saying. That what you're saying there makes sense, because I think you're right on that, because the only time you see a different name is when you have those derivatives like Wrapped Bitcoin. So like on Ethereum chain, for example, like with Wrapped Bitcoin, there's some DeFi protocol calls like Curve that pegs Wrapped Bitcoin to Ren Bitcoin and tries to keep like the derivatives at 1-to-1 to each other. But in this case, since it's still Pulse, like you don't run into that, I guess, until you have somebody trying to issue like a derivative, like a custodian or something like that. And so what you're saying makes sense. I agree with that, because you're right. Because on Binance Smart Chain or any of these other chains, USDC is still called USDC. It's not, you're not using like
different names on different
names,
for the stable coin,
the only difference between the networks is like maybe the token standard, like they call on Binance Smart Chain like BEP20 or something like that. So the token standard on Pulse chain you could call like PRC20, and then if you bring it over onto the ETH chain, it's just using the ERC20 standard, but it's still the same Pulse token.
Well, at this point, guys, I would like to talk about prices a little bit because people, they're always going to ask what is going to be the hex price, what's going to be the pulse price, and whatsoever. And you guys, Hexline and Wave3TV, you guys are perfect to talk about price. So let's talk about the hex price first. How do you think is the hex price evolving before the sacrifice phase, which is going to start in 72 hours.
I know.
And
Ellen just
after,
wants to know like what
that.
the hex price will be exactly in the next 3 months.
In the next 3 months, okay. Well, I guess before I provide before I give my thought on that, is my camera choppy for you guys?
Yes.
Okay. What I'm gonna try to do. Let me see if I can. Because I don't know why the camera here is choppy. I'm gonna try to rejoin your stream here and see if that fixes the camera issue.
Okay, yeah, then we see each other in 1 minute. And do we have anything from the chat in the meantime?
Yes, I saw some good answers from the chat. Let me see. Well, CG is saying, isn't it crazy how seeking answers only leads to more questions?
Yeah, it's like during this conversation right now with Wave3TV, I'm starting to get more questions like during the conversation.
Once you learn something, it doesn't mean it's not important what it is. Let's say biology. If you learn something, you just understand that there's so much more that you do not understand yet, just because you got deeper into
the thing is, everything is like easy to grab and to understand on the surface, and then you start with your first questions and you start your journey in the rabbit hole, and during this journey you just start to have more and more and more and more questions. I mean, I already did that with the hex rabbit hole, and when you're like down there where the fox is living, where the rabbits are living, then it makes sense again. And I'm pretty sure that when it comes to polls, in like 1 or 2 months, each and every question we have will be solved. But
it's going to be solved by Richard Hart. That's a great thing.
Yeah,
so another interesting thing is here, Retrotestic said, we can have a new stable coin that is backed by HEX. That is what the sacrifice HEX can be used for, with a question mark. But it's really, what I think is really interesting in this question is that first we got HEX from Richard Hart. Now Richard Hart forks Ethereum to make a better Ethereum. And I think the third problem we have in crypto is that we do not have good stable coins, right? Because they're all centralized.
Yeah, but as you know, what lies behind a stable coin? Behind a stable coin is the centralized fiat currency. So it doesn't make sense if you say like we can have a stable coin based on HEX, because the HEX price is one of the most volatile things we have on Earth. Otherwise, it couldn't made 2000x in the last 1.5 years. And that's why it doesn't make sense to have this as a collateral against a stable coin.
Well, sure, that was just a train of thought of this guy. But what I think is, if somebody can make a decentralized stable coin, it's going to be Richard Hart.
Yeah, I'm not sure if anybody can make a decentralized stable coin.
Well, what is decentralized anyways? I'm just saying better, just if somebody can make a better stable coin, it's Richard Hart. That's actually what I'm saying. We don't know even what decentralized is, right? So there's decentralized is a big spectrum.
So here he is back.
There he is.
Hello again.
It's still choppy on the camera. I thought I had it.
As the audio was perfect all the time, just moved on, and because people are still able to see your face. It's just like your lips are not moving accordingly.
And according to the audio, I guess it's all good as long as the audio.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, so, but I guess even back to the question as far as the pulse price, or not, I'm sorry, the pulse price, the hex price. Yeah. So I guess I will mention my disclaimer, because I know there's going to be traders watching these videos trying to make like a 3x or something like that on the price chart. And you guys know when I post content, I always, I post moves before they start to play out, because as the price, this is true for anything, as the price starts to shoot up on any coin, the risk levels start to elevate during that impulsive wave. So right now the hex price is forming, it's basically a fractal where it's very similar to the ETH chart, where it had this build up and then it had this parabolic run up to its like blow off top. So I'm seeing the same type of fractal right now, where it's like in that build up phase, and then we're waiting to see whether volume steps in on Uniswap, because ultimately, if you want that parabolic run up, the fractal is there, the setup is there. It just needs volume to step in on Uniswap, and then you can start to have a parabolic run up. I don't know if we're going to get the parabolic run up to, like, let's say, higher prices during the sacrifice phase. I'm not sure how that's going to play out there, but the fractal setup is at least there. And then you could see if we do see a run up like that, we could see a pretty incredible run up if we get that volume stepping in. But it's on the price charts, generally when you're in that pattern, it's really both scenarios are valid. It's either you continue consolidating and the volume isn't there, so you end up hitting like you end up basically slowly moving up gradually, or you get the volume that comes in and then that can spike the price up very, very quickly. I don't know if we're going to get like a multiple X increase going into Pulse Chain. You know, when I look at where the price is at today, I'm just very glad that I have my coins, and it's done really extremely well up until this point. I'll say that. So, you know, if somebody's looking for a specific, you know, answer as far as like the best time to get in, it's right now we're in price discovery, and we're within a fractal of that price discovery right now. And we basically won't know until hindsight, until we have the full cycle play out, and then the market can basically reset itself before going into a new cycle. It's these patterns so far, at least on the HEX chart, have now played out. This is now the third impulsive wave. So we had the first really big impulse correction that lasted about 300 days, and now we've been in an impulsive wave over the last few months now. So we'll see where the price takes us. The fractal setup looks good. A good representation of what that blow off top could look like is if you check out Gerardo's channel. He made a video showing the Fibonacci channels for the HEX price chart, and then the Fibonacci channels are not an absolute metric. It just shows what's in the realm of possibility if you get that fractal playing out. And it's just there's actually a snippet in there where it's an easy way to like visualize what it could look like. And if it does play out, it would closely mirror the type of pattern we see on the Ethereum price chart, even up to like the 4K top. And then even previously in the last market cycle, where it had a build up between 300 to 400 and then had a parabolic run up to like over 1,000. So we have the fractal today, and we'll see if the volume comes in going into the sacrifice phase. There's a lot of talk right now on Twitter in general. I see a lot of new people coming in. So the climate right now, it's a nice, we're in a good climate for it to maybe play out going into like the next couple of weeks, but we'll see. We need
percentage wise, how high do you see the possibility that the HEX price keeps rising during the 17 days of sacrifice phase?
Yeah, I would say if we start to see, so this is where it gets interesting with the market makers, though, because in really any coin, you have market makers that are pushing the prices up to higher price levels, increasing the fair market value. Yeah. So what's going to be really interesting is whether we see some of the big wallets that were buying previously start to buy going into this week, pushing the price up, because then everybody else that's just watching the chart, they're more likely to start FOMOing in than pushing the prices up even higher. Like I think right now the only thing that's missing is basically that and this is just the natural part of like the build up phase. It needs basically a big wallet to step in and execute a huge buy, increasing the volume, and then you start to have like other people in the market start to pile in. Like there are a lot of people watching that price chart right now. So
but why didn't that happen like yesterday? Because I thought that when Richard said like a real announcement when it starts, which he basically did, that like really will start this week, that we see something in the price chart.
Yeah, so this is where like when I go back to like even the price targets, there's like the fractal is only just it's an assessment as to what could play out based off a previous chart pattern, but it's not a guarantee. Like maybe maybe the fractal doesn't play out and the price gets stuck below 10 cents or something like that. It's pretty at this point, like if you bought your coins and you're up a lot, good thing, good job for buying the coins before like the big move started. But kind of the reality is for anybody in general that's like buying today, there's not anybody that can answer whether you're going to get like a multiple X move going into the sacrifice. Like we're not going to know until really hindsight. All I know is just based off the volume on Uniswap.
The reason behind the questioning is like how to treat the sacrifice phase, because we know that it will start this week. We know that in the first 3 days you won't have a time loss, but we know that like from day 4 we have 5% of time loss per day. But the thing is, like, if the hex price makes more than 5% plus in a 24-hour window, you would get a better deal than the day before. So should we speculate or should we go all in and within this first 3 days? That's like my personal main question right now.
Yeah, I would say that my personal strategy, if you're going into like the sacrifice phase because if you're using something like USDC, then you basically get in sooner while you have like the sooner into the sacrifice phase.
So weeks before, when we still were in Mexico, we said like move your sacrifice money into Hex, because Hex is more likely to go up until the sacrifice phase, which was like the totally right prediction. So most of my community, and including myself, we are having Hex to sacrifice. So what would be like your best game plan for sacrifice if you only have Hex to sacrifice?
If you only have Hex, then you could try to break it up into like you contribute a certain percentage on day 1. You can contribute, let's say, another percentage during like the next day or the day after. So if you're speculating based on Hex price appreciation, since that is not there's no, let's say, absolute where the price could hit going into the sacrifice, I would say probably the safest strategy is distributing it during the sacrifice phase, so that if it doesn't meet your expectation, you at least made out during, let's say, day 1 of the sacrifice phase. But I think the reality is when people look at absolute price targets, if there is, let's say, a ramp up going into it, not many are going to get that. It's very unlikely somebody throws in their Hex at the best theoretical time. It's just it's kind of the same. It's basically like the same. It's very similar to when somebody asks like when they should specifically, let's say, sell Bitcoin or Ethereum for like a cycle top or something like that. It's the same type of uncertainty as to where it could be. So I think doing the scaling approach is a reasonable strategy to basically remove.
I mean, I also have a scaling approach, but in my German stream before, my best guess for the strategy would be to go 1/3 day 1, 1/3 day 2, and 1/3 day 3, because then you make sure that you don't have any time loss.
Yeah, that seems very reasonable. So you take advantage of the.
So I still like CTA a bit in this first 72-hour window. If there is a ramp up, so my best guess is that it will be like in the beginning of the sacrifice phase, because people like tend to rush in, and if they are seeing it, okay, on day 4 and 5 and 6 I have a time loss, then my best guess is if the price rises, then in the first 3 days.
Yeah, that seems very reasonable. I mean, there's going to be speculators trying to get like a blow off top or something like that. But the thing is that the way at least that you're doing it, you're at least you're hedging all the possibilities with a certain guarantee during that 3 days. And I think that's what's important. There's going to be probably people that look back in hindsight and ask, oh, you know, if I did it at this exact perfect time. So the thing with like, you know, investor psychology and brains is like humans like to go back and always look at the perfect play. But I would say the safest strategy is probably something more in line with what Hexline or Patrick is doing, where there's just basically the scale in, and you're at least taking advantage of the first 3 days without the time loss. So that to me is very reasonable. I have more of a hedge strategy because statistically you have a better chance of doing better over a long period of time by not trying to be too greedy and go for like an absolute target. Like absolutes, it's so hard to kind of get people out of the mindset of thinking in an absolute. But I say the same thing. Like there's no guarantees in markets. There's no such thing as absolutes. There's just people that manage like their assets, and in a way, like scaling in over 3 days, you're managing, like you have the 3 day time period, but now you're also at least trying to take advantage of potential price appreciation during that period of time. So I would say
it's still like every day has a 24-hour window. I know where you're getting. So if the hex price is pretty volatile, it might be that on day 1 in hour 6 there is like a high price, and in hour 10 there is a lower price again. I know.
Yeah, because there could be there could also be whales that are trying to, like, you could, I guess if you wanted to get better resolution, you could try to watch what the really big wallets are doing as far as when they're sacrificing. So if you look at I guess somebody would have to go back to the Hex whale bots and like do chain analysis as far as like the biggest buyers, but generally those could also be good insights that could give secrets to that type of information. But the other disadvantage is, since we're publicly mentioning it on stream, it becomes less of a secret. So there's generally the things that are most effective are things people don't know or think about, and then they look back at it in hindsight as like the perfect play. And then that's why I still kind of go back full circle to the you have the scale in option during the first 3 days. You're basically just, to me it's a reasonable hedge, and you try to get what you can in terms of the upside, but I wouldn't go back and look at the price chart and be like sad of not getting like an absolute top.
I mean, if you want to have a more speculative approach, you can also say, okay, I have my bag of 100%, and then I do like 30% day 1, 30% day 2, 30% day 3, and I keep 10% to snipe.
Yeah, you could totally do that, because then that 10%
could be like a more speculative approach. But it means that you need to watch price pretty close.
Yeah, you do actually. You're basically looking at the price chart while the whole thing is going on. So
17 days, 24 hours.
Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting. I'm pretty excited to see it just play out from a market psychology. It's gonna be really cool seeing it for the market psychology, because there is a small bag of hex I want to throw into the sacrifice, but in terms of the percentages, I'm more biased on like I have just like USD that I'm throwing into the sacrifice, but then I have coins that I minted recently that I want to throw into that sacrifice, and I'm basically using that as almost like a leverage bet to try to get more multiples on it if I can. But if it doesn't work as expected, I'm not I don't really care, because either way I have at least a limit that I set into the sacrifice that I know I will have, and then anything I get on top of the hex is basically a nice little bonus. So I have a pretty good I have a pretty, at least with some extent, I can kind of estimate the range that I will have in the sacrifice phase, and that's also pretty nice. So I had conveniently, I've just been basically saving up coins over the last a couple months. Instead of restaking those coins, I'm basically just gonna say, all right, I'll take the hit on the T shares. I'll get some of the Pulse token, and then I have exposure onto for all three of them. So I have Hex, Pulse Hex, and then Pulse token. So it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun during those first 3 days.
Oh yeah, so it's going to be fun, like even after that as well, like as we talked now, because during our conversation we started to have like more and more questions. And yes, I mean, in one of the live streams Richard already said like the first time will be a chaotic time. And yeah, let's see how this plays out. Are there any questions from your side actually?
I would say not specific questions, but I would say the gas fee dilemma is definitely worth digging more into in relation to the stakes on Ethereum, so that more people are aware of that. If that gas limit issue is actually true, because I didn't run the calculation, so I can't confirm whether the limit is an issue for the max capacity of the block, because you cannot assume Vitalik is going to solve your problems. Like the reality is Ethereum land, there's different DeFi protocol. There's a lot of politics that basically go into some of these protocol upgrades. So for me, realistically, if that is an issue, then something like Pulse Chain makes more sense as a realistic solution that's more dependable from that standpoint. You absolutely cannot put your belief and trust that Vitalik is going to, let's say, solve like your problems in that instance, because there's all these other stakeholders that exist on Ethereum. And that goes back into the whole thing where I think realistically we're going into a multi-chain environment for that reason, because you have these different stakeholders that have different constraints. And then now, to me, like the use case, if that gas fee is an issue, then okay, that makes way more sense on the Pulse side. But I'm gonna run the calculation and
please
compare it. That'll be really cool, actually. So I'm gonna message you on Telegram.
Perfect.
After I have a chance to run the math on that.
All right, so we are at 2 hours. Normally, the Crypto Spa always does 1 hour streams, but of course, with you, it was really interesting.
If we have good interview partners, we like to extend it.
Yeah, but we don't do that really often. So let me see at the chat. We have somebody, Piston Bro 5555 says, but isn't there a larger amount sacrifice bonus? If you break it up over 3 days, you lose that advantage, right?
No, because you say like on which address you want to receive the pulse. So it's accumulating. So according to the new information we got today, the volume ramp will be like a accumulation. And after the first 2 weeks, you have the linear volume ramp.
All right. Other than that, I don't have any more questions. So thanks for everybody watching this stream. I hope you already liked and subscribed. And this goes for Wave3TV as well. Go to his channel as well and give him some love from the Hexicans, like always. Do you have some more questions?
Wave3TV, can you tell us how to find you, how to reach you, and like on which streaming platforms you're on?
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody could find me on Twitter at Wave3TV, and right now YouTube is the go-to streaming platform that'll have live streams twice a week. I'm also gonna release videos
at Wave3TV on YouTube.
Yes, it's also at Wave3TV on YouTube, and my DMs are completely open on Twitter. So if there's any Hexicans or just any viewers that want to reach out, my DMs are completely open. And then it's always nice being on these streams, and it goes back to what I mentioned earlier. The Hex community is by far the most welcoming, and you see a lot of this even with the the stream.
best thing is we can cross promote each other, and nobody has like a disadvantage or an advantage out of it. Yeah, everybody has an advantage out of it, because everybody gets to hear the different streamers, and everybody gets to cross promote each other. So everybody in the community has a bigger audience to hear, you know.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the really nice part with the entire community. So, my personal favorite community within crypto, as far as just the people that are involved, and the opportunity to even go on live streams and have these kinds of discussion.
And just for the audience, so Wave3TV is not it's not 100% in Hex. He also has like different cryptocurrencies as well.
Yes.
And so he knows different crypto communities as well, because I'm expecting you that you're like doing your own research in each and every product or project in the crypto space you're in. So my best guess is that you also talked with other communities where you hold a bag of. And so you can really, so there is more to his words when he says Hex is the best crypto community than like to my word, because I'm a Hex maximalist, and I'm not participating in different crypto communities other than Hex.
Yeah, it's really interesting seeing like the different social groups across the various coins. So generally, like for example, and this is actually an issue I've ran into over the last like couple months, is like generally if you send a DM to somebody that's in some other community, you usually get a very low turnout in terms of like getting a response back. Within like the Hex community, fairly high turnout, because it's a much more social community. So it's just a lot more fun. I mean, just if you even look at the Hex Vegas, that was a way better event than if you compare it to the Bitcoin conference. It's just the type of people that are in the community have they have better social skills, and that's just how it is. Like there's really good community, and that's why for anybody that's new that may be just watching the stream, it's a good opportunity for you to become familiar with the people that are on Hex Crypto Twitter, because there's a huge army of them out here that people are just totally unaware of. It's one of the most active social media outlets. Like if you check out Hex Telegram, Pulse Telegram, they're very active. They're amongst the most active amongst all the crypto communities that exist. And that's something I kind of pay attention to, is like the overall, I call it like social volume is very high on Hex.
I get the Pulse Telegram this week will be not even readable for anybody who is like just reading the Pulse Chain Telegram chat, because there are so much people in there. And when Richard will announce it this week, like, let's start now, I guess there will be like thousands and thousands of messages in there.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be very chaotic, but it's gonna be very fun. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
Really fun 3 days.
All right, so we are at 2 hours. We had 92 viewers. This is awesome. I think this is the highest number we ever had at all. And the same goes for our German stream. Today we had the most viewers in our German stream, which is
people
amazing.
Are really excited for the future.
It looks like to me that we have a lot of new people. So look at it, or Wave3TV. Can you, for the last thing for this stream, give us your pitch about Pulse in like a 1 or 2 minute for somebody that is new, because obviously we have new viewers right now.
Yeah, so I'd say my pitch is the market appears to be going into a multi-chain environment, and I would say even if you go back to the discussion we had just on the gas fees, which we still have to like confirm as a community, different chains are going to have different use cases, and there's a really big community surrounding the Hex community that will bootstrap onto Pulse chain. So it's already superior compared to other coins you typically see launch like a separate network where they're starting from scratch. There's nothing really starting from scratch in this case. So it's already It's already a very interesting launch. Richard, it's his product HEX. It's ranked number 5 or number 4 right now on Nomics in less than 600 days. So I would view this as an opportunity. And then, of course, if you're holding other coins, I always suggest manage your risk so that you're not in emotional distress at any point in investing in general. So if you do hold a basket of assets, I'd say a basket of assets is a good thing, and I would view Pulse as an opportunity.
Well, thanks.
Cool.
Thank you so much for coming by and being in our stream. I learned so much again today in just from you answering our questions. Thanks also to everybody who stopped by, being in the chat, got involved in our stream today. I hope you already liked and subscribed, obviously, because this will always pump your bags as well.
Exactly, because this cross-promoting takes care that more and more people see HEX, see Pulse Chain, see the opportunity, and we don't need to sell anybody anything. We just need to take care that people get the information, that they can do their own research, and then I guess a lot out of 10 people will decide to put some money at risk here in our products and in the new Pulse project.
So thank you. Thanks to everybody, actually, and we'll see us next Monday, right?
Yeah. Do you have anything left to share?
I would say that's probably about it for me. Definitely appreciate you having me on stream.
Yes, thanks for coming.
And I would like to chat with you guys in the green room afterwards, because I would definitely like to set up at least like perhaps a future date if you guys have any interest on coming in on a live stream on my channel or vice versa. It's completely open, so want to see if we have a chance to talk afterwards.
Sure, definitely. So to everybody out there, thanks for coming on. Thanks for putting a like there or a subscription if you're new. Thanks for hearing our interview for the last 2 hours. I hope you're as excited as we are, and the next update will come as soon as we know like which decentralized application to use for the sacrifice set, and then we are going to show you like each and every click you need to do and how you can verify that you're on the right track and not getting scammed or something like that. Because what I'm sure about, as soon as Rich has announced that we start, there will be at least 10 to 100 scammers trying to get your money. So please be aware of that. Stick to the official channels and always verify like 2 times, 3 times that you're in the in the right decentralized application and that you're in the right page for doing your sacrifice right now. And that's it. I wish everybody a great week. Thanks for coming by. To you as well, Wave3TV, thanks for coming by. Thanks for having so much value out of my questions and for providing so much value with the questions I had for you. And I hope we see each other soon again. And to everybody, have a great rest of the week. And yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.
See you guys.
See you.